Well, next is the negative recross examination of affirmative. Mr. Albrecht, you have 10 minutes to recross examine Turretinfan. You may begin when you're ready.
All right. Thank you for that, Matt. In regards to the citation in Basel, it is from of the Holy Trinity, the Incarnation, the Invocation of the Saints and their Images, which is a header. And in fact, if you have the Logos, the Early Church Fathers edition, I think you told me you had it once. I'm not sure. I think all you have to put on the top is ECF 3.8.1.3.353.0, and I can go ahead and post that as well if you'd like. But let me move on to my cross-examination now. I'm going to be covering a number of statements that you have endorsed on your website not long back in regards to the topic at hand. And I believe, I'm not sure who they come from, but I believe the statements come from a reformed work of some sort. But we read, you say that essentially says why images and pictures are not to be tolerated in churches. And it says that it is because of the contrary. It is contrary to the express command of God that images should be made and set up in churches. Turretinfan, how can you endorse such a statement if Ezekiel 41 specifically shows us a vision of images inside a church, carved images, to be precise? Why are images, statues of angels and or saints, why are they not allowed in our church? Yet in the biblical text, such a vision is shown as wholly orthodox.
The rationale would be that the image that's portrayed in Ezekiel 41 is not of a New Testament church.
Okay, so because the church in this image is from the Old Testament and it cannot be found in the New Testament, therefore it must have been acceptable back then, but then it all of a sudden was not acceptable in the New Testament. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it isn't a New Testament church. Now, what's the appropriate interpretation of Ezekiel 41? That would obviously take quite a lot longer than we have here, but it's a vision of the temple. He brought me to the temple. Ezekiel 41:1 states afterward, he brought me to the temple and measured the posts, 6 cubits broad on the one side and so forth. Measures out the details, and this then at the end he says, now the building that was before the separate place at the end toward the west was 70 cubits broad, and the wall of the building was 5 cubits thick around about it, and so on and so forth. It's got an immense amount of details, and I mean, we could try to walk through and determine what the significance is and how we should understand this figuratively or how we should understand this literally. But it's a very specific image of the temple and sanctuary. See verse 23.
Correct. I understand what you're saying. I don't need to. I don't think we need to exegete the whole passage. I think it's rather clear. Ezekiel 41 shows us a vision of images inside of a church, and my question to you is, why are these visions portrayed to us as wholly orthodox? They're never blasted as heretical or incorrect. Yet you say, and you endorse statements that say that images, statues specifically, are not allowed in our church. I don't understand. I don't understand. If you can explain that to me.
Sure, I'll try again.
Okay.
Ezekiel 41 is not talking about our churches, and the statement that you found on my website, which isn't really about the topic of this debate, which is the veneration of images, but is about having images in churches, is a statement about our churches. So not our churches in Ezekiel 41, and our churches on this not part of the debate topic.
I understand what you're saying. I apologize if you don't think this is part of the debate. The reason I specifically brought this up was because I think a few sections later we're told that images in and of themselves are sinful, so I believe that it was in connection. So I suppose if you don't want to go on with this question, I can move on to another one.
Images are not in and of themselves sinful. That's not my position.
So you do not endorse. Okay, so you do not believe that it is contrary to God that images should be made and set up in churches. You do not believe that then?
Well, the question about whether they should be set up in churches may be a matter of prudence as opposed to a matter of an absolute law.
Would that be a sin if we had images or statues set up in our churches? I imagine because they're in our churches, it would be venerated, definitely. So I imagine you would believe that to be a sin, if I'm correct.
Well, in your churches, you do venerate images.
Okay.
Our churches have, a few of our churches, much to my chagrin, have images, but those images are not venerated.
Is it sinful because, is it sinful that some of these churches have images?
I'm not eager to judge other people for sin. What I see the scriptures clearly teaching, and the topic of this debate, is the veneration of the images. It's less clear whether it's appropriate to have images in New Testament churches in the first place. I don't see that there's a strict prohibition that you cannot have any image of any kind in a room where you're meeting for worship.
Okay,
So
that's perfect. That answers my question perfectly. Okay,
great.
I'll move on to this this next question. And if you don't believe that this question is in debate, you can go ahead and tell me, and we'll pass over it. But I do believe it is relevant because I think if this would be omitted, I think it would be a grave sin. But there's another statement on this work that I believe you posted it up. It says that the theological student will search in vain in the Catechism of the Council of Trent for the second commandment. And I guess my question to you is, since I believe you do think it would be a sin if we would remove the second commandment, which is specifically in reference to idolatry. Turretinfan, before me, I have opened the Catechism of the Council of Trent. Hold on, I have it open now. Are you aware that the commandment against false worship, and particularly the injunctions against idolatry, are indeed inside this catechism? And indeed, 16 pages are devoted to this commandment alone?
16 pages that you're referring to are devoted to what's titled the first commandment in your catechism. The problem is that the catechism wrongly numbers the commandments so as to combine the words of the second commandment into the substance of the first commandment, thereby omitting the second commandment. That was what was meant on in the work that you're talking about that was posted on my blog. And as a result, I think that it mentions this on the same article on the blog, the 10th commandment is irrationally split into two commandments, so that there's thou shalt not covet. One aspect of covetousness is categorized as the 9th commandment, and the other part of covetousness is categorized as the 10th commandment.
Okay, I don't think we'd have enough time to go into a whole debate on the numbering of the commandments. But I guess my question to you would be: do you believe that the Catholic Church is dogmatic about the numbering of the commandments? For instance, let's say I would adopt your numbering. Do you think the Catechism of the Council of Trent would say that is incorrect?
There's so many statements that have been made in the body of literature of your church about which things that are taught infallibly versus which things are taught only fallibly. It is the standard Roman Catholic position that the numbering is the numbering shown in the Catechism of the Council of Trent. That is the position. Whether you can deny that and not be a heretic, I haven't researched it to the point where I could tell you.
Okay, perfect. I guess we'll move on to my next question. Turretinfan, how would you respond to further findings, particularly, again, of Goodenough, whose expertise being in studying the tombs and Jewish ossuaries of the Maccabean period up to the period of the destruction of the Second Temple, has found sufficient evidence of the usage of images. For instance, tombs that are decorated, even Torah shrines, vines, cups, doors, columns, and what have you. I guess my question for you is simple. As well as even many fragments of sanctuaries and what have you. Would this not be sufficient evidence that early Judaism had no issue with the wide usage of images, carved images or statues, even specifically even the veneration of them?
I think it would be very unusual to imagine that Jews who would be made unclean, ceremonially unclean, by touching a dead body, would be sitting around venerating the ossuary which contained the dead body. It is possible that some Jews, there's always things that are possible, but the probabilities are against that kind of behavior. Now, that doesn't mean that they absolutely ignored the dead. They whitewashed the tombs of those who their fathers had killed. Far be it from me to ascribe any kind of perfection of theology to them. But what we do know is that they were opposed to images. That's what the historical evidence suggests in the context of religious veneration. Not against all images, absolutely, but against them in the context of religious veneration.
Okay, that'll wrap up my cross-examination time. I think the time is up.